from the creator of Percy Jackson. This is the stuff of Legend's Guardian, Heroes of Olympus, the House of Hades, Rick Riordan, Epic Heroes, Legendary Adventures. Chapter 1, Hazel. During the third attack, Hazel almost ate a boulder. She was peering into the fog, wondering how it could be so difficult to fly across one stupid mountain range when the ship's alarm bell sounded. "Hard to port!" Nico yelled from the foremaster of the flying ship. Back at the helm, Leo yanked the wheel. The Argo 2 veered left, its aerial oars slashing through the clouds like rows of knives. Hazel made the mistake of looking over the rail. A dark spherical shape hurled towards her. She thought, why is the moon coming at us? Then she yelped and hit the deck. The huge rock passed so close overhead, it blew her hair out of her face. Crack! The foremast collapsed. Sails, spars, and Nico all crashing to the deck. The boulder was roughly the size of a pickup truck. Rumbled off into the fog like it had important business elsewhere. "Nico!" Hazel scrambled over to him as Lear brought the ship level. "I'm fine," Nico muttered, kicking folds of canvas off his legs. She helped him up, and they stumbled to the bow. Hazel peeked over more carefully this time. The clouds parted just long enough to reveal the top of the mountains below them, a spearhead or a black rock jutting from mossy green slopes. Standing at the summit was a mountain god. One of the Numina Motanam, Jason had called them, or Ore in Greek. Whatever you call them, they were nasty, like the others they had faced. This one wore a simple white tunic over skin as rough and dark as a basalt's. He was about 20 feet tall and extremely muscular, with a flowing white beard, scraggy hair, and a wild look in his eyes, like a crazy hermit. He blowed something Hazel didn't understand, but it obviously wasn't welcoming. With his bare hands, he prized another chunk of rock from his mountain and began shaping it into a board. The scene disappeared in the fog, but when the mountain god blowed again, other Numina answered in the distance, their voices echoing through the valleys. "Stupid rock gods!" Leo yelled from the helm. "That's the third time I've had to replace that mast. You think they grow on trees?" Nico frowned. "Masts are from trees." "That's not the point." Leo snatched up one of his controls, rigged from a Nintendo Wii stick, and spun it in a circle. A few feet away, a trapdoor opened in the deck. A Celestia bronze cannon rose. Hazel just had time to cover her ears before it discharged into the sky, spraying a dozen metal spheres that trailed like green fire. The spheres grew spikes in mid-air, the helicopter blades, and hurtled away in the fog. A moment later, a series of explosions crackled across the mountains, followed by outraged roars of the mountain gods. "Ha!" Leo yelled. Unfortunately, Hazel guessed, judging from their last two encounters, Leo's new weapon had only annoyed the Numina. Another boulder whistled through the air off to their starboard side. Nico yelled, "Get us out of here!" Leo muttered some unflattering comments about Numina, but he turned the wheel. The engines hummed. Magically, rigging lashed itself tight. The ship tacked to port. The Argo 2 picked up speed, retreating northwest as they'd been doing for the past 2 days. Hazel didn't relax until they were out of the mountains. The fog cleared. Below them, morning sunlight illuminated the Italian countryside, rolling green hills and golden fields, not too different from those in northern California. Hazel could almost imagine she was sailing home to Camp Jupiter. The thought weighed on her chest. Camp Jupiter had only been her home for 9 months since Nico had brought her back from the underworld. But she missed it more than her birthplace of New Orleans, and definitely more than Alaska, where she died back in 1942. She'd missed her bunk in 5th Corporate Barracks, she missed dinners in the mess hall, with the wind spirits whisking platters through the air and liaison areas, joking about the war games. She wanted to wander through the streets of New Rome, holding hands with Frank Zhang. She wanted to experience just being a regular girl for once, with an actual sweet, caring boyfriend. Most of all, she wanted to feel safe. She was tired of being scared and worried all the time. She stood on the quarterdeck as Nico picked mast splinters out of his arms. And Leo punched buttons on the ship's console. Well, that's sarcastic, Leo said. Should I wake the others? Hazel was tempted to say yes, but the other crew members had taken the night shift and earned their rest. They were exhausted from defending the ship. Every few hours, it seemed some Roman monsters had decided the Argo took like a tasty treat. A few weeks ago, Hazel wouldn't have believed that anyone could sleep through a Numenor attack, but now she imagined her friends were still snoring away below decks. Whenever she got a chance to crash, she slept like a coma patient. They need a rest, she said. We'll have to figure out another way on our own. He scowled at his monitor in his tattered work shirt and re-splattered jeans. He looked like he'd just lost a wrestling match with a locomotive. Ever since their friends Percy and Annabeth had fallen to Tartarus, Leah had been working almost non-stop. He'd been acting angrier and more driven than usual. Hazel was worried about him, but part of her was relieved by the change. Whenever Leo smiled and joked, he looked too much like Sammy, his great-grandfather, Hazel's first boyfriend, back in 1942. Why did her life have to be so complicated? Another way, Leo muttered. Do you see one? On his monitor glowed a map of Italy. The Apennine Mountains ran down the middle of the dock. The Apennine Mountains ran down the middle of the boot-shaped country. And a green dot for the Argo 2 blinked on the western side of the raid, a few hundreds miles north of the Rome. Their path should have been simple. They needed to get to a place called Epirus in Greece, and find an old temple called the House of Hades, or Pluto as the Romans called him. Or as Hazel liked to think of him, the world's worst absent father. To reach Epirus, all they had to do was go straight east, over the Apennines, across the Adriatic Sea, but it didn't have worked out that way. Each time they tried to cross the spine of Italy, the mountain gods attacked. For the past 2 days, they'd skirted north, hoping to find a safe pass. With no luck, the Newman and Montanum were sons of Gaia, Hazel's least favourite goddess. That made them very determined enemies. The other two couldn't fly high enough to avoid their attacks, and even with all its defences, the ship couldn't make it across the waves without being smashed to pieces. "It's our fault," Hazel said. "Nico's and mine. The Newman can sense us." She glanced at her half-brother since they'd rescued him from the giants. He started to regain his strength, but he was still painfully thin. His black shirt and jeans hung off his skeletal frame. Long dark hair framed his sunken eyes. His olive complexion had turned a silky greenish white, like the colour of a tree sap. Human he is. He was barely 14, just a year older than Hazel. But that didn't tell the whole story like Hazel. Nico the Anglo was a demigod from another era. He rated a kind of old energy, a melancholy that came from knowing he didn't belong in the modern world. Hazel hadn't known him very long, but she understood he even shared his sadness. The children of Hades, bracket Pluto, take away whichever, bracket, rarely had happy lives, and judging from what was yet to come when they reached the house of Hades, a challenge he'd implored her to keep secret from the others. Michael gripped the hilt of his Stygian's iron sword. Earth spirits don't like children of the underworld. That's true. We get under their skins, literally. But I think Numina could sense this ship away. We're carrying the Athena Parthenos. That thing is like a magical beacon. Hazel shivered, thinking of the massive statue that took up most of the hold. They sacrificed so much saving it from the cavern under Rome, but they had no idea what to do with it. So far, the only thing it seemed to be good for was alerting more monsters to their presence. Leo traced his finger down the map of Italy. So crossing the mountains is out. This thing is they go a long way in either direction. We could go by sea, Hazel suggested. Sail around the southern tip of Italy. That's a long way, Nico said. Plus, we don't have his voice cracked. You know our sea expert, Percy? The name hung in the air like an impending storm. Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, probably the demigod Hazel admired most. He'd saved her life so many times on their quest to Alaska. But when he had needed Hazel's help in Rome, she'd failed him. She'd watched, powerless, as he and Annabeth plunged into that pit. Hazel took a deep breath. Percy and Annabeth were still alive. She knew that in her heart. She could still help them if she could get to the house of Hades. If she could survive the challenge Nico had warned her about, though. What about continuing north, she asked. There has to be a break in the mountains or something. Leo fiddled with the bronze Archimedes sphere that he'd installed on the console. His newest and most dangerous toy. Every time Hazel looked at the thing, her mouth went dry. She worried that Leo would turn the wrong combination on the sphere and accidentally eject them all from the deck. Or blow up the ship! Or turn the Argo 2 into a giant toaster. Hopefully not. Fortunately, they got lucky. The sphere grew a camera lens and projected a 3D image of Apennine Mountain above the console. I don't know, Leo examined the hologram. I don't see any good passes to the north, but I like that the idea is better than backtracking south. I'm done with Rome. No one argued with that. Rome had not been a good experience. Whatever we do, Nico said, we have to hurry. Every day that Annabeth and Percy are in Tartarus. He didn't need to finish. They had hoped that Percy and Annabeth could survive long enough to find the Tartarus side of the doors of death. To find the Tartarus side of the doors of death. Then, assuming the Argo too could reach the house of Hades, they might be able to open the doors on the mortal side, save their friends, and seal the entrance, stopping Gaia's forces from being reincarnated in the mortal world over and over. Yes, nothing could go wrong with that plan. Nico scowled at the Italian countryside below them. Maybe we should wake the others. This decision affects us all. No, Hazel said. We can find a solution. She wasn't sure why she felt so strongly about it, but since leaving Rome, the crew had started to lose its cohesion. They'd been learning to work as a team. Their two most important members had fallen into Tartarus. Percy had been their backbone. He gave them confidence and sailed across the Atlantic into Mediterranean. As for Annabeth, she'd been the de facto leader of the quest. She'd recovered the Athena Parthenos single-handedly. She was the smartest of the seven, the one with the answers. If Hazel woke up the rest of the crew every time they had a problem, they just started arguing again, feeling more and more hopeless. She had to make Percy and Annabeth proud of her. She had to take the initiative. She couldn't believe her only role in this quest would be what Nico had warned her about, removing the obstacle waiting for them in the house of Hades, pushing through aside. We need some creative thinking, she said. Another way to cross those mountains, or a way to hide ourselves from the Numina. Nico sighed. If I was on my own, I could shadow travel, but that won't work for an entire ship. And honestly, I'm not sure I have the strength to even transport myself anymore. I could maybe rig some kind of camouflage, Leo said, like a smoke screen to hide us in the clouds. He didn't sound very enthusiastic. Hazel stared down at the rolling farmland, thinking about what lay beneath it. The realm of her father, Lord of the Underworld. She'd only met Pluto once, and she hadn't even realized who he was. She certainly had never expected help from him, not when he was alive the first time, not during her time as a spirit in the underworld, not since Nico had brought her back to the world of the living. Her dad's servant, Thanatos, god of death, had suggested that Pluto might be doing Hazel a favor by ignoring her. After all, she wasn't supposed to be alive. If Pluto took notice of her, he might have to return her to the land of the dead, which meant calling on Pluto would be a very bad idea. And yet, please, Dad, she found herself praying, I have to find a way to your temple in Greece. The house of Hazel. Hades. If you're down there, show me what to do. At the edge of the horizon, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Something small and beige racing across the fields, at incredible speed, leaving a vapor trail like a plane's. Hazel couldn't believe it. She didn't dare hope, but it had to be Arian. What? Nico asked. Leo let out a happy whoop as the dust cloud got closer. It's a horse, man. He missed that whole part. We haven't seen him since Kansas. Hazel laughed. The first time she'd laughed in days. It felt so good to see her old friend. About a mile to the north, the small beige dot circled a hill and stopped at the summit. He was difficult to make out, but when the horse reared and whined, the sound carried all the way to the Argo too. Hazel had no doubt it was Arian. We have to meet him, she said. He's here to help. Yeah, okay, Leo scratched his head, but, we talked about not landing the ship on the ground anymore, remember? You know, with Gale wanting to destroy us all? To destroy us and all? Just get me close, and I'll use the rope ladder. Hazel's heart was pounding. I think the Arian wants to tell me something. Chapter 2, Hazel. Hazel had never felt so happy, except for maybe on the night of the victory feast at Camp Jupiter, when she'd kissed Frank for the first time. But this was a close second. As soon as she reached the ground, she ran to Arian and threw her arms around his neck. I missed you. She pressed her face into the horse's warm flank, which smelled of sea salt and apples. Where have you been? Arian nickered. Hazel wished she could speak horse like Percy could, but she got the general idea. Arian sounded impatient, as if saying, Not time for the sentiment, girl. Come on. You want me to go with you, she guessed. Arian bobbed his head, trotting on the spot. His dark brown eyes gleamed with unjealousy. Hazel still couldn't believe he was actually here. He could run across any surface, even the sea. But she'd been afraid he wouldn't follow them into the ancient lands. The Mediterranean was too dangerous for demigods and their allies. He wouldn't have come unless Hazel was in dire need. And he seemed so agitated. Everything that he could make a fearless horse skittish to have terrified Hazel. Instead, she felt elated. She was so tired of being seasick and airsick aboard the Argo too. She felt about as useful as a box of ballast. She was glad to be back on solid ground. Even if it was Gaia's territory, she was ready to ride. Hazel, Nico called down from the ship. What's going on? It's fine. She crashed down and summoned a gold nugget from the earth. She was getting better at controlling her power. Precious stones hardly ever popped up around her by accident anymore, and pulling gold from the ground was easy. She'd fed Arian the nugget, his favourite snack. Then she smiled up at Leo and Nico, who were watching her from the top of the ladder 100 feet above. Arian wants to take me somewhere. The boys exchanged nervous looks. Leo pointed north. Please tell me he's not taking you into that. Hazel had been so confused on Arian. She hadn't noticed the disturbance. A mile away, on the crest of the next hill. He's going to get around some old ruins, and maybe the remains of a Roman temple or a fortress. I found a cloud snaking its way down to the hill like an inky black finger. Hazel's mouth tasted like blood. She looked at Arian. Do you want to go there? Arian whined as if to say, duh. Duh. Well, Hazel had asked for help. Was this her dad's answer? She hoped so, but she sensed something beside Pluto as at work in that storm. Something dark, powerful, and not necessary, and not friendly either. Still, this was her chance to help her friends. To lead instead of follow, she tightened the straps to her imperial gold cavalry sword and climbed onto Arian's back. I'll be okay, she called up to Nico and Leo. Stay put and wait for me. Wait for how long? Nico asked. What if you don't come back? Don't worry, I will, she promised, hoping it was true. She spurred Arian and they shot across the countryside, heading straight for the growing tornado. Chapter 3, Hazel. The storm swallowed the hill in a swirling cone of black vapor. Arian charged straight into it. Hazel found herself at the summit, but it felt like a different dimension. The world lost its color. The walls of the storm encircled the hill in murky black. The sky turned grey. The crumbling ruins were bleached so white that they almost glowed. Even Arian had turned from caramel brown to a dark shade of ash. In the eye of the Tempest, the air was still. Hazel's skin tingled coolly as if she'd been rubbed with alcohol. In front of her, an arched gateway led through mossy walls in some sort of enclosure. Hazel couldn't see much through the gloom, but she felt a presence within, as if she were a clunk of iron close towards a large magnet. Its pull was irresistible, dragging her forward. Yet she hesitated. She reined in Arian, and he clopped impatiently, the ground crackling under his hooves. Wherever he stepped, the grass, dirt, and stones turned white like frost. Hazel remembered the Hubbard Glacier in Alaska, how the surface had cracked under their feet. She remembered that floor of that horrible cavern in Rome, crumbling to dust, plunging Percy and Annabeth into Tartarus. She hoped this black and white hilltop wouldn't dissolve under her, but she decided it was best to keep moving. Let's go on then, boy. Her voice sounded muffled, as if she was speaking into a pillow. Arian trotted through the stone archway. Ruined walls bordered a square courtyard about the size of a tennis court. 3 other gateways, one in the middle of each wall, led north, east, and west. In the centre of the yard, 2 cobbled stone paths intersected, making a cross. Mist hung in the air, hazy shreds of white that glided and undulated if they were alive. Not mist, Hazel realized. The mist. All her life she'd heard about the mist, the supernatural veil that obscured the world of the mist from the sight of mortals. It could deceive humans, even demigods, into seeing monsters as harmless animals or gods, or regular people Hazel had never thought of. It as actual smoke. But as she watched it curling around Arian's legs, floating through the broken arches of the ruined courtyard, The hair stood up on her arms. Somehow, she knew this white stuff was pure magic. In the distance, a dog howled. Arion wasn't usually scared of anything, but he reared, huffing nervously. It's okay, Hazel stroked his neck. We're in this together. I'm going to get down, all right. She slid off Arion's back. Instantly, he turned and ran. Arion, what? But he'd already disappeared the way he'd come. So much for being in this together. Another howl cut through the air. Closer this time. Hazel stepped towards the centre of the courtyard. The mist clung to her like freezed fog. Hello, she called. Hello, a voice answered. The pale figure of a woman appeared at the northern gateway. No, wait, she stood at the eastern entrance. No, the western. 3 smoky images of the same woman moved in the unison towards the centre of the ruins. Her form was blurred, made from mist, and she was trailed by 2 smaller wisps of smoke, darting at her heels like animals, some sort of pets. She reached the centre of the courtyard, and her 3 forms merged into one. She solidified into a young woman in a dark sleeveless gown. Her golden hair was gathered into a high-set ponytail, ancient Greek style. Her dress was so silky, it seemed to ripple, as if the clothes were ink spilled off her shoulders. She looked no more than 20, but Hazel knew that meant nothing. Hazel Lerescu, said the woman. She was beautiful but deathly pale. Once back in New Orleans, Hazel had been forced to attend a wake for a dead classmate. She'd remembered the lifeless body of the young girl. In the open casket, her face had been made up prettily as if she were resting, which Hazel found terrifying. This woman reminded Hazel of that girl, except the woman's eyes were open and completely black. When she tilted her head, she seemed to break into 3 different people again. Misty after images blurring together like a photograph of someone moving too fast to capture. Who are you? Hazel's finger twitched at the hilt of her sword. I mean, which goddess? Hazel was so sure of that much. This woman radiated power. Everything around them, the swirly mist, the monochromatic storm, the eerie glow of the ruins, was because of her presence. Ah, the woman nodded. Let me give you some light. She raised her hand. Suddenly, she is holding 2 old-fashioned reed torches, guttering with fire. The mist receded to the edges of the courtyard. At a woman's sandaled feet, the 2 wispy animals took on solid form. One was a black Labrador retriever. The other was a long grey furry rodent with a white mask around his face. A weasel, maybe. The woman smiled serenely. I am Hecate, she said, goddess of magic. We have much to discuss if you're to live through tonight. Chapter 4. Hazel. Hazel wanted to run, but her feet seemed to be stuck to the white glazed ground. On either side of the crossroads, 2 dark metal torches erupted from the dirt like plant stalks. Hecate fixed her torches in them. He walked a slow circle around Hazel, regarding her as if they were partners in some eerie dance. The black dog and the weasel followed in her wake. You are like your mother, Hecate decided. Hazel's throat constricted. You knew her? Of course. Mary was a fortune teller. She dealt in charms and curses and gris. I am the goddess of magic. Those pure black eyes seemed to pull at Hazel as if trying to attract her soul. During her first lifetime in New Orleans, Hazel had been tormented by the kids at Sister Agnes School because of her mother. They'd called Mary Levesque a witch. The nuns had muttered that Hazel's mother was trading with the devil. If the nuns were scared of my mum, Hazel wondered, what would they make of this goddess? Many fear me, Hecate said, as if reading her thoughts. But magic is neither good nor evil. It is a tool, like a knife. Is a knife evil? Only if the wielder is evil. My mother, Hazel stammered. She didn't believe in magic, not really. She was just faking it for the money. The weasel chittered and bared its teeth. Then it made a squeaking sound from its back end. Under other circumstances, the weasel's passing gas might have been funny, but Hazel didn't laugh. The rodent's red eyes glared at her balefully like tiny coals. Peace, Gale, said Hecate. She gave Hazel an apologetic shrug. Gale does not like hearing about non-believers and con artists. She herself was once a witch, you see. Your weasel was a witch? She's a polecat, actually, Hecate said. But yes, Gale was once a disagreeable human witch. She had terrible personal hygiene, plus extreme, digestive issues. Hecate waved her hand in front of her nose. It gave my other followers a bad name. Okay, Hazel tried not to look at the weasel, but she really didn't want to know about the rodent's intestinal problems. At any rate, Hecate said, I turned her into a polecat. She's much better as a polecat. Hazel swallowed. She looked at the black dog, which was affectionately nuzzling the goddess's hand. And your Labrador. Oh, she's Hecuba, the former queen of Troy, Hecate said. As if that should be obvious. The dog grunted. You're right, Hecuba, the goddess said. We don't have time for a long introduction. But the point is, Hazel Levesque, your mother may have claimed not to believe, but she had true magic. Eventually, she realized this when she searched for a spell to summon the god of Pluto. I helped her find it. You? Yes, Hecate continued, circling Hazel. I saw you potential in your mother. I see more potential in you. Hazel had spun. She remembered her mother's confession just before she had died, how she'd summoned Pluto, how the god had fallen in love with her, and how because of her greedy wish her daughter Hazel had been born with a curse. Hazel could summon riches from the earth, but anyone who used them would suffer and die. Now this goddess was saying that she had made all that happen. My mother suffered because of that magic my whole life. Your life wouldn't have happened without me, Hecate said flatly. I have no time for your anger. Neither do you without my help. You will die. The black duck snarled. The polecat snapped its teeth and passed gas. Hazel felt like her lungs were filling with hot sound. What kind of help, she demanded. Hecate raised her palm arms, the 3 gateways she'd come back from. North, east, and west began to swirl with mist. A flurry of black and white images glowed and flickered like the old silent movies that were still playing in theatre when Hazel was small. In the western doorway, the Roman and Greek demigods in full armour fought one another on a hillside under a large pine tree. The grass was strewn with the wounded and the dying. Hazel saw herself riding Arian, charging through the melee and shouting, trying to stop the violence. In the gateway to the east, Hazel saw the Argo II plunging through the sky above the Apennines. Its rigging was in flames. A boulder smashed into the quarterdeck. Another punched through the hold. The ship burst like a rotten pumpkin, and the engine exploded. Then images in the northern doorway were even worse. Hazel saw Leo unconscious or dead, falling through the clouds. She saw Frank staggering alone down a dark tunnel, clutching her arm, her shirt soaked in blood. And Hazel saw herself in the vast cavern filled with strands of light and a luminous red. She was struggling to break through, while in the distance, Percy and Annabeth lay sprawled, unmoving at the foot of two black and silver metal doors. Choices, said Hecate. You stand at the crossroads, Hazel Neverskew, and I am the goddess of crossroads. The ground rumbled at Hazel's feet. She looked down and saw the glint of silver coins, thousands of old denarii breaking the surface all around her as if the entire hilltop was coming to a boil. She'd been so agitated by the visions in the doorway that she must have summoned every bit of silver in the surrounding countryside. The path is close to the surface in this place, Hecate said. In ancient times, two great Roman roads met here. News was exchanged. Markets were held. Friends met and enemies fought. Entire armies had to choose a direction. Crossroads are always places of decision. Like Janus, Hazel remembered, the shrine of Janus. On Temple Hill, back at Camp Jupiter, demigods would go there to make decisions. They would flip a coin, heads or tails, and the two-faced gods would guide them well. Hazel had always hated that place. She never understood why her friends were willing to let a god take away their responsibility for choosing. After all Hazel had been through, she trusted the wisdom of the gods about as much as she trusted a New Orleans slot machine. The gods of magic made a disgusted hiss. Janus and his doorways. He would have you believe that all the choices are black or white, yes or no, in or out. In fact, it's not that simple. Whenever you reach the crossroads, there are always at least 3 ways to go. 4, if you count going backwards. You are at such a crossing now, Hazel. Hazel looked again at each swirling gateway. A demigod war, the destruction of the Argo II, disaster for herself and her friends. All the choices are bad. All choices have risks, the goddess corrected. But what is your goal? My goal? Hazel waved helplessly at the doorways. None of these. The dog Cuba snarled. Gale the polecat skittered around the goddess's feet, farting and gnashing her teeth. Farting. You could go backwards, Hecate suggested. Retrace your steps to Rome, but Gaia's forces are expecting that. None of you will survive. So what are you saying? Hecate stepped to the nearest torch. She scraped her hand full of fire and sculpted the flames until she was holding a miniature relief map of Italy. You could go west, Hecate let her finger drift away from her fairy map. Go back to America with your prize, the Athena Parthenos, your comrades back home. Greek and Roman are on the brink of war. Even now I only might save many lives. Might, Hazel repeated. But Gaia is supposed to wake in Greece. That's where the giants are gathering. True, Gaia has set the date of August the 1st, the feast of Spes, goddess of hope, for her rise to power. By waking on the day of hope, she intends to destroy all hope forever. Even if you reach Greece by then, could you stop her? I do not know. Hecate traced her finger along the tops of the fiery Apennines. You can go east across the mountains, but Gaia will do nothing. It would do anything to stop you from crossing Italy. She had raised some mountain gods against you. We noticed, Hazel said. And any attempt to cross the Apennines will mean the destruction of your ship. Ironically, this might be your safest option for your crew. I foresee that all of you would survive this explosion. It is possible, though unlikely, that you could still reach Epirus and close the doors of death. You might find Gaia and prevent her rise. But by then, both demigod camps will be destroyed. You have no home to return to, Hecate smiled. More likely, the destruction of your ship will strand you in the mountains. It would mean the end of your quest, but it would spare you and your friends much pain and suffering in the days to come. The war with the giants will have to be won or lost without you. Won or lost without us. A small guilty part of Hazel found that appealing. She'd been wishing for the chance to be a normal girl. She'd been wishing for the chance to be a normal girl. She didn't want any more pain or suffering for herself and her friends. They'd already been through so much. They looked behind Hecate at the middle of the gateway. She saw Percy and Annabeth sprawled helplessly before those black and silver doors. A massive dark shape, vaguely humanoid, now loomed over them, its foot raised as if to crush Percy. What about them? Hazel asked, her voice rang. Percy and Annabeth. Hecate shrugged. West, east, or south? South. They die. Not an option, Hazel said. Then you only have one path, though it is the most dangerous. Hecate's finger crossed her miniature Apennines. A glowing white line in the red flames. There is a secret path in the north. A place where I hold sway, where Hannibal once crossed, where he marched against Rome. The goddess made a wide loop to the top of Italy, then east to the sea, then down along the western coast of Greece. Once through the pass, you would travel north to Bologna and then to Venice. From there, sail the Adriatic to your goal. Here, Epirus in Greece. Hazel didn't know much about geography. She had no idea what the Adriatic Sea was like. She never heard of Bologna. And all she knew about Venice was vague stories about canals and gondolas. But one thing was obvious, that's so far out of the way. My gale will not expect you to take this route, Hecate said. I can obscure your progress somewhat, but the success of your journey will depend on you, Hazel the Rescue. But the success of your journey will depend on you, Hazel the Rescue. You must learn to use the mist. Me? Hazel's heart felt like it was tumbling down her rib cage. Use the mist how? Hecate extinguished her map of Italy. She flickered her hand. At the black dog, Cuba. Mist collected around the Labrador until she was completely hidden in a cocoon of white. The fog was clearly with an audible proof. Where the dog had stood was a disgruntled-looking mist. Where the dog had stood with a disgruntled looking black kitten with golden eyes. Meow, meow, he complained. I am the goddess of the mist, Hecate explained. I am responsible for keeping the veil separate for the world of the gods from the world of the mortals. My children learn to use the mist to their advantage to create illusions or influences. The mist of the mortal. Other demigods can do this as well, and so must you, Hazel, if you are to help your friends. But she looked at the cat. She knew it was actually Cuba, the black Labrador, but she couldn't convince herself. The cat seemed so real. I can't do that. Your mother had the talent, Hecate said. You will have even more. As a child of Pluto who has returned from the dead, you understand the veil between worlds better than most. You can control the mist if you do not. Well, your brother, Nico, has already warned you. The spirits have whispered to him and told him of your future. When you reach the house of Hades, you will meet a formidable enemy. She cannot be overcome by strength or sword. You alone can defeat her, and you will require magic. Hazel's legs felt wobbly. She remembered Nico's grim expression, her fingers digging into her arms. You can't tell the others, not yet. Their courage is already stretched to the limit. Who? Hazel croaked. Who is the enemy? I will not speak of her name, Hecate said. That would alert her to your presence before you are ready to face her. Go north, Hazel. As you travel, practice summoning the mist. When you arrive in Bogana, seek out 2 dwarf mists. When you arrive in Bologna, seek out the 2 dwarfs. They will lead you to a treasure that may help you survive in the house of Hades. I don't understand. Meow! The kitten complained. Yes, Akuba, the goddess flickered her hand again, and the cat disappeared. The black Labrador was back in its place. You will understand, Hazel, the goddess promised. From time to time, I will send Gale to check on your progress. The polecat hissed. Its beady red eyes full of malice. Wonderful, Hazel muttered. Before you reach Epirus, you must be prepared, Hecate said. If you succeed, then perhaps we will meet again for the final battle. A final battle, Hazel thought? Oh, joy! Hazel wondered if she could prevent the revelations she saw in the mist. They had fallen through the sky. Frank stumbled through the dark, alone and gravely wounded. Percy and Annabelle at the mercy of a dark giant. She hated the gods' riddles and their unclear advice. She was starting to despise crossroads. "Why are you helping me?" Hazel demanded at Camp Jupiter. "They said you sided me with the Titans in the last war." Hecate's dark eyes glinted. "Because I am a Titan, daughter. And I am a Titan, daughter of Percy and Asteria. Long before the Olympians came to power, I ruled the mist. Despite this, in the first Titan War, which was a millennia ago, and a millennia is 1,000 years ago, by the way, I sided with Zeus against Cronus. I was not blind to Cronus' cruelty. I hope Jesus would prove a better king." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "When Demeter lost her daughter Persephone, kidnapped your father, I guided Demeter through the darkness night with my torches, helping her search. And when the giants rose the first time, I again sided with the gods. I fought my arch enemy, Clytius, made by Gaia to absorb and defeat all my magic." "Clytius?" Hazel had never heard of the name Clytius. But saying it made her limbs feel heavy. She glanced at the images in the northern doorway, the massive dark shape looming over Percy and Annabeth. "Is he the threat in the house of Hades?" "Oh, he waits for you there," Kate said. "But first you must defeat the witch, unless you manage that." She snapped her fingers and all of the gateways turned to dark. The mist dissolved. The image is gone. "We all face choices," the goddess said. "When Cronus arose the second time, I made a mistake. I supposed I had grown tired of being annoyed by the so-called major gods. Despite my years of faithful service, they mistrusted me, refused me a seat in their hall." The polecat Gale chittered angrily. "It doesn't matter anymore." Sorry about that, I do like to sing though. I'll make some songs if you check on my P. The polecat Gale chittered angrily. It does not matter anymore. By the way, the P is under the video, by the way. "It does not matter anymore," the goddess sighed. "I have made peace again with Olympus. Even now, when they are laid low, they're Greek and Roman personas fighting each other. I will help them, Greek or Roman. I have always been only Hecate. I will assist you against the giants, if you prove yourself worthy. So now it is your choice, Hazel Levesque. Will you trust me or will you shun me as the Olympian Olympian gods have done too often?" Blood roared in Hazel's ears. Wait, what blood? How did blood get in Hazel's ears? Could she trust this dark goddess who had given her mother the magic that had ruined her life? Sorry, no. She didn't much like Hecate's dog, nor her gassy polecat either. But she also knew she couldn't let Percy and Annabeth die. "I'll go north," she said. "We'll take your secret path through the mountains." Hecate nodded, the slightest hint of satisfaction in her face. "We have chosen well, though the path will not be easy. Many monsters will rise against you. Even some of my own servants have sided with Gaia, hoping to destroy your mortal world. The goddess took her double torches from their stands. Prepare yourself, daughter of Pluto. If you succeed against the witch, we'll meet again." "I'll succeed," Hazel promised. "And Kate, I'm not choosing one of your parts. I'm making my own." The goddess arched her eyebrows. The polecat writhed and her dog snarled. Going to find a way to stop the gale, Hazel said. We're going to rescue our friends from the Tartarus. We're going to keep the crew and the ship together, and we're going to stop Camp Jupiter and Camp Half-Blood from going to war. We're going to do it all. The storm howled, black walls of the funnel cloud swirling faster. Interesting, Kate said, as if Hazel was unexpected result in a science experiment. That would be magic-worthy seeing. A wave of darkness blotted out of the world. When Hazel's sight returned, the storm, the goddess, and her minions were gone. Hazel stood on the hillside in the morning sunlight, alone in the ruins except for Arian, who paced next to her, nickering impatiently. I agree, Hazel told the horse. Let's get out of here. What happened? Leo asked as Hazel climbed aboard the Argo 2. Hazel's hands still shook from her talk with the goddess. She glanced over the rail and saw the dust of Arian's wake. Hazel's hands still shook from her talk with the goddess. She glanced over the rail and saw the dust of Arian's wake stretching across the hills of Italy. She had hoped her friend would stay, but she couldn't blame him for wanting to get away from this place as fast as possible. The countryside sparkled as the summer sun hit the morning dew. On the hill, the old ruins stood white and silent. No sign of ancient paths or goddesses or farting weasels. Hazel, Nico asked. Her knees buckled. Nico and Leo grabbed her arms and helped her to the steps of the foredeck. She felt embarrassed, collapsing like some fairy tale damsel, but her energy was gone. The memory of those glowing scenes at the crossroad filled her with dread. I met Hecate, she managed. She didn't tell them everything. She remembered what Nico had said. Their courage is always stretched to the limit. But she had told them about the secret northern pass, through the mountains and the detour Hecate had described that could take them to Epirus. When she was done, Nico took her hand. His eyes were full of concern. Hazel, you met Hecate at the crossroad. That's something many demigods don't survive, and the ones who do survive are never the same. Are you sure you're... I'm fine, she insisted, but she knew she wasn't. She remembered how bold. Sorry about that. I couldn't find my lines. I just said she for a long time. Sorry. She remembered how bold and angry she'd felt telling the goddess she'd find her own path and succeed at everything. Now her boast seemed ridiculous, and her courage... sorry, I forgot where I was. Oh, I found it, sorry. Her courage had abandoned her. What if Hecate is tricking us? Leo asked. This route could be a trap. Hazel shook her head. If it was a trap, I think Hecate would have made the northern route so tempting. Believe me, she didn't. Leo pulled a calculator out of his tool belt and punched in some numbers. That's something like 300 miles out of our way to get to Venice. Then we'd have to backtrack down the Adriatic. And you said there's something about Baloney dwarfs in Boglana. Hazel, I think Boglana is a city. But why do we have to find dwarfs there? I have no idea. Some sort of treasure to help us with this quest? Sorry about that, paper ripped. Tasty paper. Oh, I'll get that way up. Sorry, my mum doesn't see this. Okay, let's go on. Dwarfs in Bologana, Hazel said. I have no idea. Some sort of treasure to help us with this quest. Huh, Leo said. I mean, I'm all about treasure, but it's our best option. Michael helped Hazel to her feet. We have to make up for lost time. Travel as fast as you can. Percy's and Annabeth's lives might depend on it. Fast, Leo grinned. I can do fast. He hurried to the console and started flipping switches. Nico took Hazel's arm. Nico took Hazel's arm and guided her out of earshot. What else did Kate say? Anything about? I can't. Hazel cut him off. The images she had seen almost overwhelmed her. Percy and Annabeth helpless at the feet of those black metal doors, the dark giant looming over them. Hazel herself trapped in a glowing maze of lights, unable to help. You must defeat the witch, Hecate said. You must defeat the witch, Hecate said. You alone can defeat her unless you manage that. The end, Hazel thought. All the gateways were closed. All the gateways closed. All hope extinguished. Nico had warned her. He'd communed with the dead, heard them whispering hints about their future. 2 children of the underworld would never enter the house of Hades. They would face an impossible foe. Only one of them would make it to the doors of death. Hazel couldn't meet her brother's eyes. I'll tell you later, she promised. She promised, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Right, now we should rest while we can tonight. We cross the Apennines. Phew, it's hard reading for 1 hour non-stop. Trust me, do not read for 1 hour non-stop. It gets really tight. Especially since it's 10 o'clock in the night. Been reading for an hour. Wow. Okay, so I just stopped just because we're on chapter 5 now, which is Annabeth. I think this is going to get really exciting. Oh my god, Annabeth is Annabeth is only quite a short chapter. And we have lots of Annabeth chapters, by the way. I'm just skipping at the pages until we go to page 56. 57 is the last Annabeth. 57 is the end of Annabeth. And we're currently on page 32. On page 33. And I've been doing this for 1 hour non-stop. Oh my god, I'm tired.